there. It's been a while since I last talked on this platform, but the thing I'm going to talk about is actually the same thing I'm using to record this video, which is my smartphone, and the way it's become sort of a devil's bargain to have it, and what parts of my life I think would be better without it. I've lived with a smartphone for 6 years. I got my first smartphone in January of 2016 as a gift from my father. And since then, I've used a smartphone daily for 6 years. I don't think I've gone a single day in the last 6 years without looking at my smartphone. And in fact, I don't think I've gone a single day in the last 6 years without spending several hours a day looking at my smartphone. To the point where I start to feel it eating into other aspects of my life. When I first got it, I used it less, but it was also this amazing thing. I could have the internet at my fingertips to carry with me no matter where I was. And that was a big deal. It was the ability to communicate no matter where I was, the ability to look things up, to connect with people, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing at the time. I could log into Facebook and talk to people. I could get on YouTube and listen to music or political commentary or documentaries or just any number of things with no restrictions. And that was incredible. And the novelty lasted years. It didn't last days, weeks, or months. It's lasted for years. And that's something scary in a way. Because it's not the object that is the phone itself that is novel, but the way in which it can keep drawing you to novel experiences. And so you get a bit of a high every time you interact with it. I get that every time I interact with it. And the problem is that it has eclipsed every other form of entertainment for me. I used to read. I used to draw and paint constantly. If you think I'll post a lot of drawings on Facebook. Now go on my Facebook page, look at all the drawings I post. You'd say, well, Sam, you still draw a lot. And I guess from the perspective of an average person, yes, I do draw a lot. But I don't as much as I used to. And I don't paint very often. And I used to paint a lot. And that's something I wish I did more of. But instead of doing that, I stare at a screen. Instead of reading, I stare at a screen. I have records and CDs and cassette tapes in my house. And instead of listening to them, I stare at a screen. And I stare at specifically this little 5-inch by 2.5-inch screen that I keep in my pocket. When I want to watch a movie, I don't go to my collection of VHS or DVD or Blu-ray. I go to streaming. I stream it either through things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever, or YouTube movies. I no longer use physical media, which means that should I ever have my accounts deleted on these websites or choose to delete my accounts, I will lose access to this media that I enjoy. As soon as as soon as I fall afoul or decide that I'm no longer invested in this infrastructure, I lose access to everything that I purchased through this infrastructure, which ain't great to say the least. Not to mention the fact that this now absorbs most of my waking hours. I no longer listen to the radio. I no longer read. I no longer draw and paint, at least not as much as I used to. Reading is the big thing though that I miss, but my attachment to this smartphone, to this electronic device, is so ingrained, so hardwired into me, that I get separation anxiety or don't even think about pulling one of the many, many books, old and new, off my bookshelf. It just never crosses my mind at all to go to my bookshelf and read a book. And when I eventually sort of go, no, I'm going to force myself to read, I then find myself drawn into the book, to the experience of reading, which is very different than, say, the experience of reading a post on Facebook or a community post on YouTube or a Tumblr post, because you're drawn in vibrantly to the story. A book is like a friend who invites you in, whereas a Facebook post is... I don't know what a Facebook post is. Part journal or diary, part public forum, part toxic dump. It's far from what I would consider to be a healthy platform, and yet I use it and I appreciate it for what it is. I appreciate that I get to communicate with my friends and family, and I've, in fact, made new friends through this platform. And yet, I cannot help but be disappointed in the quality of my interactions. My patience is lesser than it used to be. I used to have a great deal of patience for, say, putting a record on the record player and just letting the record play through to conclusion, flipping it over, playing the other side, and then not having any compulsion to go change the record out or change tracks on it while I sat and read. I could do the same with a CD, even though it was much easier to change tracks on a compact disc. It was... in a bizarre way, I was more meditative as a teenager than I am now as a grown man of 27. 10 years ago, I was more patient, more focused. Age has made me again a child, in the worst way possible. I am more cynical than I used to be. I'm less cheerful in my outlook, that's for sure. I am more often depressed or upset at things. I am no longer able to be patient. A YouTube playlist is an excuse for me to skip songs endlessly because I've either heard them all before, or when they eventually recommend me a new one, I dislike it because it's recommended me something that is anathema to my taste. And every attempt I make to sort of cut back and combat this reminds me that the problem, as much as there is an obvious problem with the platforms, there is also a problem within myself. And that problem is my attachment to constant stimulation from this magic device that I carry everywhere with me, and that I can't bear to be rid of, and yet can't stand to live with. And perhaps the answer is to cut myself free of it. I need a GPS for work, so I should probably just buy a GPS that can only be a GPS, and downgrade to a flip phone. Or maybe a Nokia, brick. Something indestructible that, apart from phone calls, doesn't do anything. Maybe I should. No, I know I should buy a real camera and carry that with me instead of using my cell phone as a camera. I have a dream of being a writer, but it's more inviting to stare at my phone than it is to write. My computer is something I seldom use. I tried gaming, and for a while, video gaming did take over from the phone as my entertainment when I got home. But then I played a couple of games, and I grew bored of that, and I should have taken that as the moment to start writing. But I didn't. So I don't read, and I don't write. And I'm less literate than I used to be, or at least less eloquent. Words I'm sure I used to know often escape me. My memory is less active than it used to be because I can have the phone remember things for me. All of this is not disturbing, but distressing. And it's the kind of distress where I know what the solution is, but also can't bear to force myself to just solve the issue. And I think as long as I am tethered to this smartphone, my dissatisfaction with it will continue. And the problem is that it is an addiction that I am going to have to break. I am addicted to this even more than I am addicted to caffeine. And I know what the solution is. I don't know if I have the heart to, or the will, to actually solve the problem. Because I need to have within me the will to act on what I know I need to do, which is downgrade. Go back to a, in many ways, pre-digital lifestyle. Because I accepted the devil's bargain as a gift, and it's turned into a trap. a trap which traps not my body, but my thoughts. Um, and I want to be rid of it. So if you've had a similar experience, please share it in the comments or through some other means. And if you've managed to give up a smartphone, tell me how you did it and how it's going for you. Because I want to know. Anyway, that's enough of me complaining about my own life choices. See you in the next video, whenever I actually upload that. Bye.